Hello, it's Scott Manley here, and today I am looking at Orbiter once again. I get a lot of requests to play this again, and truthfully this time I'm not really playing it because I'm going to be doing Yuri Gagarin's flight. I'm going to be doing Vostok 1. And if you remember, he was basically locked out of controlling that. He had a secret code that would let him control the spacecraft, but he did not actually use it. Regardless, there's a lot to talk about here. This is the whole launch process. I'm going to speed this up by a factor of 10 here. You can see him standing here, and there he is, jumping into his little elevator, getting carried up. This would have happened normally like a couple of hours before the mission itself, but obviously here you want to do this right away, right? Oh, and we're just turning the spacecraft around here. The orientation's never quite what you want it, is it? There we have him sitting inside this. During a launch abort, you would be able to eject out the side there, but hopefully I wouldn't need to do that here. Oh yes, we're actually going normal at time acceleration. And we get to hear Yuri's actual words. Let's go, or something like that. Oh, I love listening to the actual chat. Okay, well that was all very informative given that I don't actually speak Russian, so you can look it up to find out what they were actually saying. But this is, of course, launching on the R7 rocket, which is essentially the prototype for even the current generation of Soyuz rockets. Originally it was designed as an ICBM launcher. It was totally impractical ultimately as it, but it was the first intercontinental missile launcher. And it launched the Sputnik spacecraft, and ultimately, of course, it launched the Vostok, the Voskhod, and the Soyuz, all essentially with this same first stage, and then larger second stages for the larger payloads. So how are we doing? 76 seconds. We should be burning out the fuel in these side boosters. These are liquid oxygen and kerosene fueled engines. Obviously. Well, okay, so this was designed as a nuclear missile, delivery vehicle, and that was, of course, Korolyev's grand plan to, get funding and get development for his manned space program. He came up with all sorts of military applications, and the original, or one of the ways he got funding or got time for the manned program for the Vostok design was that it was actually also dual-purpose, designed as a spy satellite. And there goes the boosters. I love the way those separate. It is a thing of beauty when those things go. Okay, so this is the core stage. Again, liquid kerosene and oxygen. I'm going to go up to 10 times time acceleration. This is all completely automated. There's, as I said, Yuri Gagarin did not have a great deal to do on this flight. Currently, we are at about 170 kilometers, moving at 5 kilometers per second, and then the final stage kicks in here, pushing us the last kilometer per second or so into orbit. We'll be ditching that any minute now. So yeah, this actual design was also used for the Zenit spy satellites, and I'm probably going to mispronounce a whole bunch of things here. I should also point out that when they launched, they did not actually launch from Baikonur. And the reason was that the launch site was actually a place called Tyurtam, and I'm probably mispronouncing that. But when they told the world, they said they had launched it from Baikonur in Kazakhstan. Now, years later, they rechristened the area, so it's now called Baikonur, to essentially make their statements a reality. So this is the model. This is obviously a mod, incidentally. I love the way the antennas come out here. These little panels here open and close during flight to regulate the temperature of the interior of the spacecraft. Now, the flight is completely automated. You can look around the interior of the spacecraft. You have 3 portholes here to look through. There's one. There's one behind the head here, which I can barely see. And there's this very important one here, which is the visor. I'm not sure. I can't remember what the exact translation of is in Russian, but it's spelt BZ. I can't remember what it is. But it's actually a really cool optical instrument, which has like a magnifier in the middle, and then it has this conical prism around the outside. And the idea is that for re-entry, you have to use this to orient the spacecraft and have the horizon oriented along this correctly. This is the panel on the side, and well, there's all sorts of fascinating things I could do here. One thing you might want to do is turn off the radio so you're not catching all these bits of music. We can just appreciate the sound of the instrumentation as it goes to work. Very important here, you have the clock ticking away. This little yellow thing here, this is my re-entry clock. I think when it gets to here I start reorientation, and when it gets to here the re-entry burn actually happens. The re-entry burn is controlled by this switch. If you switch it off, you have to then get new coordinates and new programming information from the ground. This is the keypad to unlock things, and actually, let's just do that. I'm starting my orbit, and I'm going to completely break from reality and type 1, 2, 5. I think that's it. Let's try that again. 1. Ah, there it is. I clicked. Now I should be able to switch into manual control mode. So manual control is really weird. You have to kind of hold the button for a few seconds, and then you'll hear it start to fire. And then as I let it go, it'll revert to manual, and you can just see in the edge here the booster rocket. I wonder if I can just zoom in and see that. That is the booster floating away from the spacecraft there. Can't really see what it's doing, but it's floating away. Okay, what else do we have here that's going? You know, I can fly that thing around, but that's pretty dangerous, so I'm going to turn it off and close that down. They weren't sure whether Yuri Gagarin would have would go space crazy, basically, so they made it that he'd have to actually really know what he was doing to actually do anything here. I'm going to turn on some time acceleration here because we really want to make this mission a little shorter than the 90 plus minutes that it takes to go across around the world. But yeah, look at that spacecraft. As I said, it was also used. It was used for the 6 manned Vostok missions. There were a couple of missions prior to this where they launched dogs, and not all of those were successful. But really, the design saw most use as a spy satellite chassis, where the instrumentation would be inside this thing, and it would be returned, this re-entry sphere. They had the idea that a sphere was the easiest thing to control during re-entry. You know, they just made the entire thing a giant heat shield, and that simplified a whole bunch of things. There is our first sunset. Now, Yuri only spent one orbit. He only flew one orbit, and spent one night. Then during the night, he couldn't see very much. All of the Vostok re-entry burns were performed during daylight because they didn't really have the instrumentation to be certain that they would be able to do it correctly. They had to aim for the Soviet Union, obviously. They didn't want their technology falling into the wrong hands. There we go. We are now on the dark side of the Earth, and everything is going to plan. Inside here, well, now that it's dark, we can actually turn on some lights here. There, that's the TV light, and I can control the brightness of this. This up here is a little clipboard, and I think if I can turn this around, where have we got it? There we go. I, again, can't read Russian, but I think this is the credits for the mod. This is an Orbiter 2010 mod, so you can see the names of the people that developed or helped develop it there. I think I could be totally wrong. What else can we see here? There's all these switches that do various things. This is my clock. This is my supplies. CO2 seems kind of... Why is my oxygen at 0? That doesn't seem like a good plan. Oh yeah, we can test all the warning lights using this button just so we can see what a really bad situation looks like. Yeah, no, not a good time. These are my like fuel pressures. I think this is the maneuvering. This is my automatic maneuvering, and this is my descent engine, or my deorbit engine. So we're now flying over the Pacific at this time. Again, not much to see. Let's see if we can see anything. Nope, nothing to be seen as we cruise over the Pacific at 8 kilometers or 7.5 kilometers per second, setting records and everything else, of course. Now, originally they designed, or they hoped that if the deorbit burn failed, it would be in an orbit which would decay within 10 days, and they would be able to recover the pilot. As it turned out, the spacecraft went into a slightly higher orbit than they expected, and if the deorbit burn had been unsuccessful, Yuri would have probably died in space. But he didn't. He instead had other problems, which are unfortunate. He never really got to fly again in space because he was considered too valuable, too much of a propaganda tool. But he had his own ideas to a certain extent. He really wanted to fly in space again. They would barely even let him in planes, and unfortunately, during a training flight, his plane suffered some sort of problem, which has always been the subject of many conspiracy theorists' speculations, let's say. And he crashed and was lost, unfortunately. I think this switches my my fuel supply manually. What else? I think these are the shutters that let me control. I can shut the shutters down if I'm going, if there's too much light coming in. Let's just dim the lights just a touch. Are we getting ready for sunrise yet? Sunrise must be coming soon, surely. I see a red glow in this direction. There we go. And you know what? I think F2 switches my camera mode, and there is the sun coming up. The first sunrise seen from space, assuming I pointed the spacecraft in the correct direction. Well, it doesn't matter. You guys can appreciate its historic significance. Okay, so yeah, we also have the little navigation instrument up here as well that he would be using. Another interesting thing is that there would basically be only 2 orbits per day where you could attempt a deorbit burn, and so you would have to prepare that in advance. The reason was that the lighting had to be correct so they could reorient the spacecraft according to using the viewer instrument, the visor. And if that was not the case, then you couldn't be sure that you would be coming down in the correct location. And of course, they were very sensitive, being all, Cold War and all that. We are coming up towards Africa soon here. And now, the system is now starting to reorient it for descent. So we can actually view it from the inside so we can get an idea of what it's doing. Let's accelerate that to a factor of 10. You can see that middle section is really magnified. And then the ideal situation for descent will be to have the Earth horizon all the way around this. And then these arrows point to the direction that the landscape should be moving through. So the land should be passing this direction. Once those are all lined up and the timer is in the correct position here, then the engines should warm up, pressurize and fire, and the descent shall begin towards Earth. Okay, let's try accelerating time just a little so that we can watch this happen. I think this is, one of these is Moscow. This is mission elapsed time. One of these is Moscow time. I think that's Moscow time. But yeah, when this hits this marker, that is when the descent burn is going to begin. And we'll watch these gauges here for the actual burn actually happening. This indicates manual control, I believe. I can't really read all of this stuff because I don't know enough Russian. There is a literal phonetic translation for all these characters, but I forget most of them. Okay, getting close. Watch it. And come on. Okay, now I'm just sitting here waiting for the burn to happen. This is the instrument that will tell us. Oh, shoot. What did I do there? I hit that switch. I hope I didn't break anything. Oh, well. I didn't. Oh, there we go. There's the engine firing. So that's the system pressurizing. It pre-pressurizes and then the engine fires. It uses some sort of hypergolic propellant mix, if I remember correctly. For in-orbit orientation, they use nitrogen cold gas thrusters. Nothing particularly fancy, nice and stable, but they needed to make sure they kept enough fuel in reserve for all this to actually get orientation during descent. Okay. So you'll notice actually from the interior, did I see that? Where's my... Oh, where's it gone? Oh, my little clipboard has fallen down somewhere. I can take a look out the side window as well if I like. Okay, there we go. And... oh, there's the clipboard once again, floating back up. Now we're in 0G. Floating up to its current location. There it goes, Vostok. Now... from the outside, we've picked up some spin, and this happened for real. This section did not detach when it was supposed to either. I can make a quick fix for that, and the quick fix is, of course, open this up and activate manual orientation mode, and it should at least arrest my spin somewhat. Okay, let's look at the exterior. 10 times time acceleration. You can see me zipping over Africa at this point. There's the equatorial area with all those rainforests and everything. Tropical rainforests. We're about 250 kilometers up. Our eccentricity is about 0.0376. We're descending very slowly, and we're going to be flying over the Middle East eventually. Right over the middle of Central Africa at this time. I guess I could control the spacecraft if I wanted. Not that it would matter. I mean, at this point, let's see what happens. I'm holding... oh, there's the button. You hold the button for such a long time. And then it kicks in. These straps, incidentally, these are metal straps that hold the... oh, they may not be metal, but they're straps that hold this thing in place. For some reason, this never decoupled when it was supposed to. Okay, let's wait until we get much closer to the surface. There we go, 10 times time acceleration. We're about 100 kilometers up. We should start to see some sort of thermal effects. There we go, things start to get hot. And Yuri is probably getting a little concerned. He did get a little concerned because he had not detached from this. And that was not going as planned. We're right now over the Middle East. This is the Mediterranean, I believe. Actually, we're just flying north of like the Arabian Peninsula. This is, I guess this is the Mediterranean. My geography is terrible. Greece, perhaps? Turkey? I don't know. It's that kind of corner. Go and check it out. Okay, so when's this going to get hot enough? We're now 104 kilometers up and things are starting to get very hot. Let's hope we don't have to do the re-entry with this whole thing attached, because that would not be good. 101 kilometers. 100. 100.3. 100. And come on. Come on, don't fail me. I need to... I don't know, I need to do this. I need to not die. There he goes, and you can actually look around and see there's Yuri in there. You can just see him there. You can see him there smiling serenely. That's there we go. There's the straps. Detached at 92 kilometers. Now this is a ballistic re-entry. It doesn't have any aerodynamic capabilities, so it's going to be subject to about 9 Gs of deceleration or thereabouts. There we go. Spinning around. I'm just doing 10 times time acceleration. Yeah, there's not much for me to do during this. Yes, you can do all this stuff manually if you want, but the original mission, you know, they didn't trust the pilot to do anything. So it's kind of a shame that the guy that went into space first didn't really have much to do, and they didn't want him to do anything. They were worried he would go space crazy. Well, you know what? I should probably close my windows so I'm not getting cooked by thermal radiation coming through. I could probably turn out my lights. Although wait, where's the light coming from if all these are closed? Okay, never mind. Lot of heat coming through this thing. 35 kilometers up, moving at about 5 kilometers per second, decelerating, yeah, about 8 Gs right now. Not pretty. At least the rotation, at least he's oriented correctly. When that thing was attached, it was threatening to make him go the wrong way. So we slow down. Now we're 20 kilometers up. The shock heating is gone. We're only moving at about Mach 1, Mach 2, 700 meters per second. Let's reopen all these windows so we can have one last look. Now, if you look where he is here, right, that's where he's sitting. See this circular thing here? That is where he's going to eject through, because Yuri Gagarin, of course, did not land with his spacecraft. It was going to land at about 10 meters per second under its own parachute, and that was probably too fast for the crew to be safely landing with it. So they eject the crew out before actual landing, and that's about to happen. Well, we're about 7 kilometers up, so there we go, and off he goes. At that point, of course, he became ineligible to set, you know, all sorts of flying in space records, which is why the fact that he did not land with a spacecraft was kept a secret from the, from the aviation records people. And so, yes, Yuri Gagarin, hero of the Soviet Union and all that, completing his first and only space mission. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.